For those of you that have already gone through the bulletin, you may realize that I'm not preaching this Sunday, which is great. You get to hear another voice. Danny is going to come share a word with us, and it's a number of things. One, it's what is on Danny's heart and what he wants to share with you. And it's based off a book by Matt Miofsky, Let Go, I believe, is the title of the book, and he'll share maybe a little bit more about that with you. But also, it's this story of Moses and the burning bush. It's one of those stories that many of us know well, and we could retell it. But it's also a story that's going to be shared in August with our Vacation Bible School program, so maybe a little bit of a sneak peek there. But maybe the most important part of this announcement is because Danny thought I was crazy, the scripture he's going to share is more of a paraphrase of what's going to happen in Exodus, and it comes from this Bible here that he thought he might get laughed out of here for. It's the children's Bible. And I said, it'll be fine. I'll explain it, and it'll go perfectly well. The children's Bible is what many of us started with. It shares the big stories in a way that we can just begin to grasp them. And yes, there's a lot more going on in Exodus in your Pew Bible. But then the other reason why this is okay is that in seminaries now, of all places, they have classes on the children's Bible. Why do they do this? Because I think Sunday schools and vacation Bible schools have in some ways not completely prepared pastors for seminary, because some of their knowledge of the Bible doesn't get them all of those stories that we know from our children's Bibles. And so this is another way to grasp it. And my comment to Danny throughout this week was simply this, is I don't care if it's the Pew Bible, I don't care if it's their study Bible, I don't care if it's whatever translation is. If they're not reading it, it doesn't do them any good. So if a children's Bible is what you're reading, that might be a good place to start as well. So don't let the Bible distract you. It's a good message about letting go and moving on and figuring out some of those things in life. And I'll just let him share that instead of trying to step around his time.
You should go for it. The change you want to make. The risk you've been considering. The new thing you might start. You should go for it. More than likely, you will have to leave something behind. There will be unexpected twists and turns. Fear will sneak up and make a home in your heart. There will be a million reasons for you to stay put right where you are. But you were made for this. To grow, to move, to change. It won't be easy, but it will definitely be worth it. Stop worrying about what could go wrong. Start wondering about what God will do if you would just let go.
In 2019, Matt Miofsky wrote a book called Let Go. And I didn't really know who he was or where he came from. And he's the pastor of a United Methodist church down in St. Louis called The Gathering. And at the time, my home church, Hope Church, back in Bloomington Normal, did a series on his book, Let Go. And I absolutely loved it. Pastor Jenny did a nice job of summing it up, but it also resonated with me because I was in a transitional period in my life. I was in that phase between high school and college. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't even know if I wanted to go to college. But I took a chance. I ended up spending a couple years at a community college, a college that I fell in love with, that I absolutely did not want to leave. And I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself in my sermon here. But essentially what this book is it's teaching us, it's showing us how we can let go of what we have, move on to something greater. Because I believe that we as Christians, we as humans, we as United Methodists, we are here to do something big. We're here to change the world, whether that be just one person or it be an entire community of people. And so in Exodus, we see the first on record, the first historical version of what's known as the hero's journey. And Exodus is more than a story of Hebrews moving from one location to the next. It's a story of us. It's our journey as well. And that's why it's just a great example of the hero's journey. So in this children's book I have, I'll be reading what is a summary of Exodus chapter 3 and a little bit of chapter 4. And it says this: Moses went to look at the strange fire. God spoke to Moses from the fire. Don't come any closer. Take off your sandals. You are on holy ground. Moses was scared. He covered his face. Go, bring my people out of Egypt, God said. But I can't do that, said Moses. But God promised to help Moses lead the people. So I'm going to start off with a little bit about me today. So I was hesitant to use my story to share this sermon, but both Matt Miofsky and Pastor Curtis pushed me to share my story. So my parents were both Marines. My dad served for about 10 years, and my mom served for about 3.5, maybe 4, when she was medically discharged with me, when she was pregnant with me. I was the 4th child of 6. I grew up with 5 sisters. When I was about 5, my parents lived in Bloomington Normal, and that is where they got divorced. My dad ended up moving to Missouri at the time, and my mom stayed in Bloomington Normal, where I grew up. And I absolutely loved Bloomington Normal. It had a great library, a great resource for me to check things out and to do great things. And it had a great community of people willing to help a single mom raising 6 kids. But it was more than that. But when I was 14, my pastor decided that I needed a little bit more discipline, a little bit more guidance in my life than my mom could provide. So he and my mom decided that it would be best if I went to a military school. So when I was 14, I got shipped off to a military school, and I'm going to be honest, I didn't really like it. What 14-year-old would? But it did provide me with some great things. I can still bounce a quarter off my bed. I still have a pretty clean room. I have great motivational skills, and I have really good time management skills. Not only that, but as a single mom who was trying to raise 6 kids, and she was homeschooling us, homeschooling doesn't really work out when you don't have a college education and you have 6 kids and you're trying to work a minimum wage job. So my education was definitely not where it should have been. And well, this military school tested me, and I tested at a 3rd, 4th grade level when I was 14. And by the time I left a year later, I was where I needed to be. I was a freshman in high school when I left, and I did tested at a 10th grade level, and I thought that was awesome. I'm finally where I need to be. So when I returned home, I went to the local high school, Normal Community West High School, go Wildcats, and I absolutely loved it. But I was scared. I'd never been in the public school like I had been homeschooled, and I didn't know if I was going to fit in. I didn't know if I was going to make friends. I didn't know what this part of my life was going to hold. And I ended up graduating class of 2017. And that was a huge deal for me because I had 3 older sisters, and none of them had graduated high school at that time. And so I was absolutely ecstatic when I graduated. Walking across that stage is probably one of the best moments of my life to date. So then I had a teacher, Miss Sherman, who pushed me to go to college. And I told her, no, I really don't want to go to college. I'm working full-time at this auto body shop, and I love working on cars. It's what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. And she said, okay. And then she made a deal with me. She had this program. It was a coding program, and I absolutely loved it. She said, if you want to come back and volunteer, you have to go to college for at least 2 semesters. So I reluctantly went to college, and I was only planning on going for 2 semesters just so I could come back and volunteer at this high school program. But as you all know, I spent 3 years there. And then in March of 2020, the entire world came to a stop with COVID-19. It was not something any of us had anticipated, and it changed each and every one of our lives, and changed mine as well. So my school went completely online, and I didn't like that. I'm not an online learner, never really was something for me. And I was not able to complete a lab portion of a class that I needed to graduate, which means that I wasn't able to graduate with my associate's degree from Heartland Community College. So then in August, I transferred to Greenville University without my associate's degree. And I was nervous, I was scared. I remember driving the 2.5, 3 hour drive down from Bloomington to here, and I was nervous. I cried a little bit, and I remember my buddy John, who was helping me move down here. He was a go-get-em, and he did everything that I couldn't think of, and he was really supportive, and I appreciate that from him. And I enjoyed my time here at Greenville University, but I didn't find the niche that I was looking for. So in March, I decided to apply. I got accepted into Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville, which is where I'll be going this August. And I had it all figured out. I wanted to get my computer science degree. I wanted to be a software engineer. And then this thought popped up in my head. You ever get those thoughts that you don't know where they come from, you don't know why you think them? And this thought was, what about seminary? Should I consider ministry? And I couldn't pick two career paths that were more different. On one hand, you have a computer science degree. You're a software engineer. You sit at a computer all day. You don't really talk to people. You have all those stereotypes that you see in those movies. Those are kind of true for me. I don't really have the best social skills. And then, on the other hand, in ministry, you have to have really good social skills. You're an outgoing person. And yes, I am outgoing, but not the way that a pastor is. And so I decided that I would talk to Pastor Curtis and a couple other people that I had trusted about considering ministry. And then I decided it was time for me to get my associate's degree. So I took a couple online classes from Heartland Community College, and as of 2 Fridays ago, I have officially completed my associate's degree, and that is something that I am very proud of. And now I'm in this transition time right before I go off to school again. I'm starting at a new school, and I keep having these thoughts of if I can make friends, if I'll fit in, will I be able to pass my classes? And that's my life in a nutshell up to today. And there's a lot more to my life than just that, but that's just a brief summary. And there's one element that is consistent through all of these times in my life, and that's the element of change. Now, I don't really like change. I like getting into my routine. I don't like to deviate from it. If something happens on Monday that throws off my routine, then my whole week is kind of messed up, and I don't really like it. But we as humans were meant to change. Whether we choose to change or whether we're forced to change, it's going to happen. And so, for the past 3-4 years, I've tried to embrace it, especially since the pandemic. This pandemic has made me more flexible than I've ever been before. And although I'm not as flexible as a lot of people are, I'm a lot more flexible than I used to be when it comes to my routine and my schedule and things that make me me. But I was able to take this step to leap forward, to embrace this change, to see what comes next. And I had this burning bush moment. That's what Matt Miofsky calls it in his book. So when Moses approaches this fire, he sees and he gets called by God to lead his people out of slavery and take them to the promised land. And in today's sermon, and in the sermon I'm about to preach in a couple weeks, you'll see 3 different main points. The burning bush moment, which is where we're at right now, the wilderness, which is that transitional period, and then the promised land, which is where we're supposed to end up. And today we're going to focus on that burning bush moment. Now, when God said, "Lead my people out of Egypt," Moses said no. He said, "I'm not good enough." That was his first excuse. His first excuse was, "I couldn't do that." And being the first of 5 excuses, Moses thought he had a really good leg up on God. He's like, I got 5 excuses in my back pocket. I could pull one out right after the other, and God's not going to let me do it after I give him all 5 excuses. Now, Moses had a speech impediment, right? He didn't know how to talk the way normal people talk. And I can relate to that. Growing up, I had a speech impediment, and I worked really, really hard to control that and to overcome that obstacle I've had in life. And although I'm not perfect, and I do stutter sometimes, and I don't know which words to use sometimes, I would say that I'm mostly over that speech impediment. But Moses wasn't close to that. And although I can relate to him and not being able to want to speak publicly and not being able to want to talk, he just thought that he wasn't good enough, that even though he was different than everybody else, he couldn't do what he was supposed to do. And then when God said, okay, I'll give you Aaron, he gave excuse number 2. What will other people think of me? How am I supposed to go down and lead people out of Egypt? I am a nobody. As far as everybody knows, I killed somebody and then I ran away. They're just going to think negatively of me. But I like to think about it like this. Why does it matter what other people think about me? To a degree. Like, for example, if I were to go out and do something and Pastor Curtis would come up to me and be like, hey, why did you do this? And I'd give him my explanation. If he tried to guide me in a certain way, I'd probably listen. But if I'm walking through Walmart and somebody says, you shouldn't be wearing those shoes, I'm probably not going to pay attention to what they say. So then Moses gives excuse number 3. What if people don't believe my calling is real? And that's where we have to trust that everything will work out in the end. We have to trust that we know ourselves. We have to trust that we have great leadership in our life. We have to take a leap forward. We have to take a step of faith. I'm going to put a pin in that because I'm getting a little bit ahead of my sermon. So, and then Moses gives excuse number 4. I am not qualified. How many of you have had a job or that you've started something or you started working on a home project where you don't think you're good enough to finish? You don't think you're qualified. For me, that happens all the time. I don't think that I've ever been good enough to graduate from college. I don't think that I've ever been good enough to work in the digital media industry. But yeah, I am doing both of those really, really well right now. And though I could use some improvement here and there, I do think that I might not be the best qualified person in the world, but I'm good enough to get the job done. And so we don't always have to be the best qualified person to do something. We just have to be good enough to get the job done and maybe go an extra mile or two. And then the last excuse Moses gave was, somebody else can do it. That's okay. I'm not going to step up to the plate. I'll have somebody else lead people through the wilderness and into the promised land. I'll have other people lead them out of slavery. Or maybe we could think about it like this. I'll have somebody else step up and do this volunteer ministry at the church, or I'll have somebody else do this job, or I'll have somebody else fill in the blank. And the way I think about it is, if I'm not going to do it, nobody's going to do it. And that's great initiative, and I really like taking initiative because it gives me a sense of purpose. And if I see something's lacking in an area, I try to go out and fix that. Now, that's all great, but that also gets me in a little bit of trouble sometimes. Taking too much initiative is sometimes not the right path to take. So, all 5 of these excuses come from something, and that something is fear. I like to sum it up as the what if question. What if I can't volunteer? What if I won't be able to start that new job? What if I won't be successful at adopting that new child? What if I can't start a ministry? What if I fail when I move to Texas? What if I fail at making new friends? And all of these are fears. But let me ask you another question. What if? What if you can successfully volunteer? What if you can successfully adopt a child? What if you can successfully start a new ministry? What if you successfully can move to Texas? And I use Texas here because my buddy's from Texas and he's watching, so I thought I'd make a little fun of him. What if you can make new friends? And so behind all these fears are just the fears of inadequacy. And so once we can put these aside, once we can get past these fears, we can start thinking about how do we do what we want to do? How do we start this new job? How do we move on to something better? How do we do what we're made to do in this life? And that's where the letting go comes in. To grow, to change, to move, you must let go of what you have. You must leave. You have to leave home. Now, home doesn't have to be a geographical place. It doesn't have to be a physical location. It can be a place of comfort, the known, the predictable, the safe, the familiar. And leaving this home, you have to let go with both feet. You can't have one foot on this side of the road and one foot on that side of the road because you're going to get hit by a car. You have to cross the road, and you have to leave what you have completely behind because you can't be in two places at once. It's not possible. And if you try, it's just going to be that much harder on your life. So, and then step 2 of the letting go process is the leap of faith. Told you we'd come back to that. So people want to know the where, the how, the why, the when, the finances. I'm getting ready to move to Edwardsville, and I am concerned about the how, the why, the when, the where, and the finances, especially the finances, because moving to a new place and a new town, and you aren't really sure what challenges you're going to face, it's really scary. But I also know that I'm really good at planning. Pastor Curtis knows this. Before I moved down to Greenville, I came over the summer probably about 10 to 12 times to visit the university, to check out this church, to meet people in the community. I was really good at planning that out. And everything that I had planned for when I moved down here didn't work out. None of it. And I think it was God's funny way of showing me that no matter how much I plan, and no matter how much I take the time to make sure something's going to work out, I can't guarantee that it's always going to work out. So I just have to take that leap of faith. I have to jump in. And sometimes what prevents us from jumping is we don't really want the change that we're seeking. So I really want this bachelor's degree in computer science, right? But to get this degree, I had to leave Bloomington Normal. I had to leave this place of comfort, this church that I loved, this community that I had, this school that I had fallen in love with. And I didn't want the change that was going to happen to me, but because I did leave that community, I did leave that place, and I took a leap of faith, and I sought the change that was coming, I was able to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And although I'm not quite 100% sure I'll end up as a software engineer right now, I can guarantee you that it's a lot better of an idea that I had than 2 years ago. And so to leave home or a place of comfort, we must trust. Now, trust unlocks the doors to the next stages of our journey. So we first have to trust in ourselves. If we don't trust in ourselves, we can't follow through with what we have. We won't believe in ourselves. And it's that form of belief that we can do it, that we were made for this, that propels us to be successful. Then we have to trust our leaders. And in this case, I have a lot of trust in Pastor Curtis, Pastor Jenny, and Pastor Kara from my home church back in Bloomington Normal. I trust them a lot. They've given me a lot of guidance over the years. They've given me a lot of help. And I have been successful not because of what I've done, although that is part of it, but I've been successful because they've been able to guide me and lead me. And I've been able to been led, and they've been able to guide me because I do trust them. And then we have to trust our friends and our family. We should all be surrounded by a community that supports us and loves us, and no matter what we do, will take care of us. And that's where trust from friends and family come in. If you don't have friends and family that you can trust, then something needs to change because they're not going to be able to support you like a really good community such as this church right here. And then trust from people you love. When you change and when you do things and as you get more social in life, and whether you're transitioning from junior high to college or high school to college or college to a full-time professional job, or whether you're transitioning from a professional job to another job 4 states away, you're going to meet people. You're going to come across people. Some you'll trust and some you won't. But it's those trusts, those bonds, those friendships that you form that make life worth living. It's the people that you can have an impact on. And it's a great thing when you can trust those people to be, hey, let's go out this Friday night and let's grab some wings, or maybe a beer or two. Or maybe you can sit down and have a conversation about something really, really heavy, or maybe something really, really light. But no matter what, you can always count on them. And then you got to trust in God's calling. If you're really meant to change from one job to the next, if you're really meant to volunteer in a position here at the church, or maybe you're trying to start a new ministry, or maybe you're transitioning from high school to college, whatever it is, you got to trust that God is calling you to do what you're doing. And it's really important that you have God's guidance in this, because without it, you're just going to be wondering what you're supposed to be doing, where you're supposed to be at, and how you're supposed to do it. So in conclusion, letting go takes a lot of courage, trust, and love. But we are called to do something big. We're called to change the world. We're called to move on to something greater in our lives. And if we are called to do so, we must let go and trust that everything will work out. Let us pray. Dear God, what a long period of training Moses had to undergo to be prepared for the work he had to do. Although Moses had his doubts, and I definitely have mine, we all know that our love was made for so much more. Please help us live our lives with open hearts, open minds, and open doors. Amen.